In this workshop on the 3-minute summary, I want to take some time to think about and discuss with you or for you in front of you an alternative approach that you can use to supplement or perhaps complement what you're already doing to draft. And I'll give you a little background here as I kind of introduce the idea. But basically, this is the idea. In surveying students over the past few years, I've noticed that more and more students are actually drafting their documents on their smartphones, thumbing through 500 words, giving feedback in Canvas or Blackboard on their phones, thumbing. And I'm thinking to myself, given the proclivity we have as humans to use more and more modern technologies to do more and more common acts, where are we finding ourselves with the possibility of using our computers, our smartphones, for example, to help us with our writing beyond, spell check or communicating across vast distances, which are all nice things? Are there things that are really easy for us to do that we could leverage to our benefit? And so in the 3-minute summary, I want to kind of pitch an idea to you. And it's one that may help you either, even if you don't use it, kind of inform your existing practice. And if you do kind of pick it up here and there, it may be something you find advantageous and time-savoring. Think about this. How much time would it take for you to write out the sentence I'm speaking, to think it, and to say it? Those are a lot of questions, but think about the fact that thinking of something oftentimes seems immediate. We experience that very immediately. Saying it, also pretty fast, right? But put a pen to paper or your fingers to keys, and all of a sudden it seems like it takes forever sometimes to talk out a complex idea or to put it into words, because finding the right words, did we spell it correctly, getting sidetracked by syntax and sentence formation and those kinds of smaller order things kind of limits what we're able to do. Whereas when we speak, it's more extemporaneous in the moment, and it kind of lets us put ideas out there in a greater, fuller pattern. Just like when we're thinking. So if you can think to an example when you once had a great idea but then went to open your mouth and it didn't come out the way you thought it would, that difference between thinking an idea, explaining an idea with words, and then writing it out to share it with someone else as being very different experiences. Where then can your smartphone or your computer help you to kind of do something with your writing, to get it out there faster? And I'm going to use the example of a summary, although you could do anything with this. You could talk about writing an abstract, writing a thesis, writing a 5-paragraph paper. It doesn't matter. So here I want to take a moment to talk about how historically digital devices like spell check and other things really aren't the best tools. They're useful tools, but they require a lot of conceptual work. So some framing questions for you. Think about this. If you had to write a resume right now, at the top, put how many words you can write a minute. How many is it? Is it 45, 60, 90, 120? How fast could you text a sentence? That is, how fast could you use your thumbs or your fingers to put some material together? How fast or how well, percentage-wise, think efficiency, do you remember the exactness of a quote? Think back to what I just said. Can you repeat it word for word? Now ask yourself a final question. If you use Siri on your smartphone or Cortana on a Windows device or phone or anything else in that way that does dictation to text, what level of effort is required for you beyond actually going back and kind of spell checking and proofing things? And it's not as much, right, as it is to actually transcribe things. So I want to use the case study of the example. For our purposes, a summary is a 250 or so word explanation of a text. And this concept kind of syncs up with other workshop videos on summary and rhetorical reading notes or critical reading habits. But basically, imagine if you were to write a sentence at the bottom of each page of a text you're reading and then read that paragraph at the end together aloud, while Siri on your smartphone or your MacBook or Cortana on your Windows device were to transcribe that information for you. How much space would you actually, or how much time would you save in that moment? So a summary is a 250-word document, right? It's a paragraph. It's 6+ sentences, and it has information that you're able to kind of explain very quickly. Think about how much time it takes you to actually explain or read word for word a 250-word summary. It's not very long. It may be 3 minutes, if that, right? It's probably much less than that, reading at a normal human rate of speed. But the real question is what information goes into a summary. And so this is a critical reading process, right? So when you talk about summaries and what you want to include in them, you need to think about, how do I get the information I want into a summary? And this is the opportunity for that dictation moment, right? If you can identify a list of specific, discrete questions you want to answer for a text, ask yourself the questions and then answer them aloud, all of a sudden you have the opportunity to have your computer record those notes for you. And many people do this anymore. We take notes, we speak aloud into our phones, we share audio clips, we do snaps. It doesn't matter. We do this thing now where we communicate very quickly in that way. So why not let Siri record a note for you in your smartphone, on your iPhone, for example? Why not let Cortana or Dragon, for example, on your Windows computer do something to record what you're saying? I do it all the time now when I give feedback to students or when I take when I drive home. I actually prepared this presentation on my smartphone while just talking into my phone. You know, Siri takes a note, I say the things I want to say, I come home, I rearrange that information, I make it into a PowerPoint, and all of a sudden that information didn't take much time to type. The thinking component was the heavy lifting part, actually was what took the most time, and Siri took the dictation and put it into word form for me that I later parsed out. So thinking about what actually is important when you start to do your summary, you have to ask good questions. What goes in a summary? What kinds of things do you want to put in there? And once you have those questions answered, you can take that information and revise it and go through it and look for typos, look for common errors. We don't talk like robots, we talk like the humans we are. So the elocution of our words, the way we emphasize syllables in a certain way, may confuse our robot transcribers. So in that way, oftentimes we'll get a lot of flubs in the things that we say. I know I get a lot of ands, A-N-Ds, that aren't really ands but something else, like an and, for example, as a article. So those kinds of small transcriptional errors we have to go back and reread for ourselves and fix. So when we limit ourselves to like a minute or two of recording, from dictation to text, there's not very much to go back and proof. And if we do it right after we do it, it's easier to do. So if you can talk almost as quickly as you can think, right? Your words are coming out of your mouth. Think about how you can use digital dictation technologies, right? Like Siri, like Cortana, like Dragon, to take your language and put it onto the screen for you more quickly, so you don't have to think about actually writing it out and staying in the pen motion or in the typing motion. You can focus instead on thinking. If you can do your thinking while you're talking, things might come out that you want to get out, as opposed to kind of getting trapped in the process or the box of language and editing. So I've given you an example here, and you can click on, you can go to this link. If you look up George Lakoff Idea Framing and Metaphors in Your Brain, that's a quick YouTube clip you can watch. But once you've watched it, and just take a few minutes to watch it, you can see a set of questions you can answer. And this is just an example, but you can, with any text you want to summarize, tell the story of the text. If you start with a topic string that tells who's doing it, what it's called, and what it's about, you get this nice container sentence. If you ask yourself what the text is about, if you ask what the author is doing in the text, if you ask yourself what the author is trying to get out of the text or how they're moving A to B to C to D, and then if you ask yourself what examples or keywords are present, and you answer these questions, and you answer them aloud, read through the questions, ask them, answer them, all of a sudden you have this dictated information. And when you look at that information, you have all the parts you need to make a good summary, right? You have the rhetorical information of authorship and title and main idea, right? You have what the text is about, how it's broken up into parts, what the author is doing in the text, or how the author moves from A to B to C to the end, and examples and key words. But all you've done is announce them instead of writing them out. And in that moment of asking these kinds of questions of your text, think back to your rhetorical notes, right? Because you already have these things. You can actually compile a really quick summary that you can go back and start revising. And if you take these 5 sets of questions and you ask yourself these and you let yourself dictate them to a computer, you'll find that all of a sudden your 250 words are probably already there. Now it's just a matter of rearranging them, making the transitions work, making the content work in a more cogent and a cohesive way. So that's the idea of the 3-minute summary. If you can accept that Siri or Cortana or Dragon, for example, are able to keep up with your speech, and you can ask good pointed questions about information that belongs in a summary, you can marry those two things into actually applying them and finding that you can write a good summary quickly. I use the example of 3 minutes, but that's just, maybe it's 2 minutes, maybe it's 4 minutes. The idea is that it's a lot faster than sitting down and writing it out by hand and asking yourself a lot of questions for most people.